Yeah. So, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this session of dtalks or Disruptive Literacy Talks. I'm your host, Mashood Bhatt. When we talk about the new national education policy and the goal with respect to achieving the foundational literacy and numeracy for all our children, it's also important to understand and to study what have been the successful stories so far in the case of India with respect to universalizing these skills in education. And if we take the example of Kerala, it has always been a leading example for so many years in foundational skills, especially. So today, our discussion is going to revolve around how learning outcomes can be achieved and quality education can be achieved, and what can be the role of the government in ensuring that. With case study from Kerala, we are very honored to have a very special guest with us. He is the Principal Secretary of Education of in the government of Kerala, and he has, in fact, been an exceptional bureaucrat who has even won has been the recipient of the State E-Governance Award, which is instituted by the government of Kerala for initiatives taken in the education department. With this, we would like to welcome our guest for today, Shri Mohammad Hanish, sir. So thank you so much, despite being a busy day, for finding time to join us on this talk here today at dtalks. So to begin the conversation, as we are aware that Kerala's achievement with respect to socio-economic development and education development has been truly inspiring. Would you like to share as to what is like the next step? What are the next goals with respect to the government? Because the rest of the country at this point of time is still struggling with foundational literacy and numeracy. Where does the education department in Kerala want to go next, and what is that target, and how we are thinking of achieving that, sir?
See, I would actually divide Kerala's educational evolution into 4 stages. One is the historical phase, where from the beginning of the 1800 and 1810, because of the benevolence of the then erstwhile Maharajas of Travancore and Cochin, the Christian missionaries could actually kickstart a great deal of campaign in literacy. They established English schools, Malayalam schools everywhere. The German missionaries as well as the British missionaries were quite responsible for it. Thereafter, by the start of the 19th and 20th century, this movement was actually spearheaded by social reformers like Shri and Guru and others. So what happened was that the foundations that were laid in the 19th century with regard to the literacy, establishment of literacy and academics in the state of Travancore and Cochin was carried forward to the British Malabar as well. Kerala, in fact, has been divided into 3 regions: the princely state of Travancore, the princely state of Cochin, and the British, Malabar, which was part of the Madras Presidency. Madras Presidency was limping along all the time because there wasn't much of a focus. But that was not the case in Cochin and in Travancore. By the start of the 1900s, with the advent of the social reformation movements spearheaded by people like Sri Guru and others, what happened was that from 1900 to 1950, there has been a spurt in terms of the attainment of literacy, in terms of the attainment of academics by the lower middle classes as well as the socially backward classes. Now, it's a matter of wonder that in the year 1901, when the census of India, the then British India, was conducted, the highest literacy rate in the whole of this country was recorded in the state of Travancore, and the percentage was 51% at the turn of the century, 1901. By 1950, the library movement and also a great deal of progressive movements have also made its advent. That was the second phase. The third phase I would certainly put it this way: between 1950 and 2000, when a great deal of social expenditure by the government went into the sectors of social security, education, and health. That's what one calls as the 1957 onwards as the Kerala model of development. It had its run. At the same time, we had actually put economic progress in the back burner. That's why, in terms of industrialization, in terms of industrial revolution, we've been limping all along. I mean, actually having a very faulty steps in that. At the same time, when it came to education, literacy, housing, shelter, whatever, social programs, actually led the pack. And in terms of the advancement in the whole of this country. 1950 to 2000, be it the left government or the right government, tremendous amounts have been spent on creation of schools, pre-primary schools, colleges, and so on and so forth, especially in the British Malabar region, which was actually considered to be relatively backward at the time of this merger of the three regions to form the state of Kerala in the year 1956 after the linguistic reorganization of the government of India. After 2000 comes the fourth stage wherein we enter into the kind of digital age, wherein digital transformation of the paradigms of education became all the more important. That's when the state could boast of the first ever dedicated TV channel that subscribes to the students, the Victor's channel, which was inaugurated by then President of India, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam. Apart from that, we also tried to introduce ICT-enabled textbooks, ICT-based textbooks into our curriculum. 2005 and 2006 are quite critical because the National Curricular Framework and the Kerala Curricular Framework came in. Then we toyed with this experiment of having social constructive methodology and social constructivism as the basis of the pedagogical approach that we should have. In other words, to simplify matters, it would be like this: whatever textbook sessions that are taken, whatever classroom sessions that are taken, get transformed or get linked inextricably to the social realities. In other words, what we found was that whatever scientific theorem or the social truth that is taught in the classrooms need to be linked immediately to the society. The societal values were reinforced in this manner. So from 2000, this has been the experiment that's been going on. ICT-enabled education, along with its social constructivism. Constructivist methodology was brought in. Now, we have come to a stage wherein this COVID pandemic has come in, and in the aftermath of this pandemic, what has happened is that there has been a spurt in the use of the digital equipments. From 2020 June onwards, we have been carrying on with the various models of digital education. This year, we decided that instead of this one-way communication, it has to be a two-way communication. Two-way communication can happen only if there is an online classroom, only if there is a kind of interactive session that goes on. So that's the greatest challenge that's been taken by the government of Kerala. Most interestingly, most fortunately for the state of Kerala and the government, the Malayali diaspora, the Kerala diaspora spread across something like 100 countries across the world, have handsomely contributed towards providing digital educational equipments, be it a tab or a laptop or a smartphone for the students in the state. We did the census of the students who don't have access to the digital equipments. Out of 42 lakh students in the state, in June end, the numbers were just 4.72 lakhs. Now that has once again got reduced even without the support of the Gulf diaspora, just because of the local collaboration, to 3.75 lakhs. We intend to cover this digital divide and see to it that ultimately by the end of this pandemic, which is actually an opportunity for all of us, we should be able to go on to the next phase of digital education driven models. This is where we are. Textbook revision is going to happen. The teacher education has to go on to new context and new absolutely different hybrid models wherein the online education and the physical education have to be integrated. Starting from November 1st, we are going to have the opening of the schools across the state. Now, what would that, unravel? That would bring about not just physical classes. At the same time, we intend to introduce or rather make full utilization of those digital equipments that have come handy for the students. So it should be a hybrid between the online classes and the offline classes. Now, we need to focus further on machine learning, augmented reality, virtual reality, artificial intelligence, and so on and so forth. For that matter, the teachers have to be trained properly. New models have to be created. We are in touch with the pioneers in this industry and all those the wonderful practitioners across the world, across the globe, and across the states. This is where we are placed today. 12 years back, when I was education director, computers were just coming into the schools. We were having computer labs across the state. We used to get handsome amounts from Government of India to see to it that the IT at school program becomes a success. But beyond that, we are going in for greater creation of value systems across. Apart from scientific science, education based on science, social science, and maths, the next focus would be arts, culture, and a great deal of value-based education. Moral science is a subject which we used to teach in the past in the missionary-run schools. It's gone out of touch altogether. We need to bring back this moral science in a better way without any religious or casteist connotation. That is what we have to do. This is where we are. This is the kind of presentation which I would like to make. Thank you.
Yes, sir. So thank you. Thank you for your thoughts, sir. Here, sir, like sir mentioned that this it's been, historically the state has done extremely well with respect to this. Sir, if you may ask just two more questions, sir. We understand you're very busy. Two questions. One was with respect to any policy which is introduced in the government. There is often we see in many states, for example, when new innovations are introduced, it takes a lot of time and effort and alignment to align all the different stakeholders in education. What has Kerala's experience been with respect to bringing these new pedagogies and technology, and how has any kind of the consensus building happened, and what can other states learn from Kerala on this, please?
Thankfully, for an absolutely politically hypersensitive state like Kerala, wherein everything is dealt with in terms of the idioms and expressions of politics, the good thing is that there has been a commonality of approach with regard to the progressive nature of education. The local self-governing institutions have been carrying forth with great deal of strength in comparison to the LSDIs across the country. Here, these local self-government institutions, their representatives have seen to it that the schools in the neighborhood get the best possible teachers, get the best possible infrastructure, and the best possible labs as well as computers. Now, when it comes to the imparting the discourse, the teaching discourse that takes place in the classroom, even the local ward member of the panchayat would definitely raise his voice and state that Mr. X is not teaching properly and Miss Y is teaching very well. Now, when it came to the 5-year on and off, episode of this LDF versus UDF, what has really happened is that in terms of education, apart from the usual little polemical corrections or ideological corrections, there has been a commonality of view. There has been a unanimity of view with regard to the progressive nature of education that needs to be imparted to the students. So, be it the private sector, be it the aided school sector wherein government pays for the salary of the teachers, be it the government sector, there has been a kind of a unanimity of view that education, come what may, is the mainstay of the state of Kerala.
Yes, sir. And monitoring and evaluation with the National Education Policy, talking about foundational literacy and numeracy, they're talking a lot about monitoring the levels and the achievement surveys. But often we see that monitoring, if used correctly, can have wonderful results, but can also be sometimes a demotivating factor for schools and teachers. How has Kerala approached this to kind of balance the monitoring as well as to ensure systemic motivation of stakeholders?
Systemic motivation of the stakeholders happen only when there is a continuous interaction, a great deal of engagement of the various stakeholders. Here in this case, fortunately, the school management committees, the parent-teacher associations, the support groups across that small village or gully or that that little gaon that we have, they have all been active enough in promoting the concept of our school and our village. So there is a great deal of motivation for the teachers as far as we are concerned. But then I am a bit worried about it because we at times have fallen below whatever the Himalayan state of Himachal Pradesh could do in education. The kind of motivation that was imparted to the teachers in the hillocks and the mountains in Himachal Pradesh have not been matched with the kind of energy levels that we have here. We need to boost the energy level a bit. That brings in the question of bringing in a greater deal of ingenuity, interest, and innovative concept into the discourse that happens in the classroom. The teacher, the taught, and the classroom. These are three sacred terms which have to be carried forth with all the kind of sanctity that it deserves.
Right, sir. And so, how has Kerala approached the capacity building of middle level managers who have been identified as very important coaches and mentors for teachers. They are monitoring the data, they're seeing the learning levels. Any success stories from Kerala that can be replicated in other states?
The diets across the state, like any other state, have been doing, quite a lot of service in the sense lots of innovative study materials have been made. Quality tracking or quality monitoring is an issue which is of serious concern. Even today, we've not been able to perfect an absolutely perfectionist model over here. We have been making our attempts all the time, but we may have been successful at times, but then we have always been a bit failure also at times. We need to really create an absolutely robust model by which quality tracking is measured in terms of the tangibles. What's happening today is that, like any other social sector reform, the intangibles are the ones which are determining the progress or the evolution of a teacher or the teaching society. Here in this case, the very clear definition of the distinction between a teacher and a government employee has to be made. A government employee, the regular clerk over there in the office, looks into the files. In the case of the teachers, they look into the welfare of the next generation. That value or that value addition has to be completely imbibed by the teachers at large. We have been trying to do that. The middle level management system, the assistant educational officers at the sub-district level, district educational officers at district education level, and the deputy directors of education at the district level. The systems are there, but then because of the kind of multiplicity of challenges, the kind of complexity of various issues involved, they have not been able to provide sufficient time for quality tracking, quality monitoring. So that's wherein we have suffered a bit. I would frankly confess that in terms of the kind of learning levels of a subject like mathematics, Kerala has been behind Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu has been far ahead of us, not far ahead, a bit ahead of us, especially with the kind of inculcation of the abacus model that they have brought about and the activity-based learning as well. So we need to imbibe many of the good successful aspects of the models that we build across the country.
Right, sir. And sir, with respect to engagement with civil society organizations and NGOs, how does the Kerala government approach NGOs and CSOs who are working in the field of education? Is there scope for example, trying out innovative activities with respect, within collaboration? And how can other states learn from this public-private partnership in Kerala, for example?
Education being a sensitive subject, we had always been a little conservative about intervention by the NGOs and other organizations, especially in the matter of curriculum, in terms of the transaction inside the classrooms, because the teacher unions are also very strong enough, I should admit that. Now, that being the case, when it comes to the infusion of technology, when it comes to this infusion of the best possible principles of digital education, we are trying to absorb or rather kind of collect the best possible systems from across the globe. That calls for transformative approaches. That calls for inclusion or a participation of NGOs as well as not-for-profit organizations into the realm of education. We are certainly in favor of that. In fact, in the realm of art education, for instance, we have been having discussions with some of the private players to see to it that how to make music, dance, art, culture, and painting and so on and so forth as attractive as possible, beyond the little confines of the regular arts teacher or the crafts teacher whom we have in abundance. We need better material. We need better teaching methodology. We need a greater deal of effectiveness in terms of the transaction of the learnings for the students.
Right, sir. So here we would also like to ask you about your thoughts on this new mission of foundational literacy and numeracy. Nipun Bharat is talking about universalizing the foundational skills. So how is Kerala approaching this specific mission with respect to its own in its own schools? And if you look at the previous missions which have been there in literacy, is there something which other states can learn from this? And if you'd like to kind of share your thoughts on that, please.
Functional literacy as such has definitely been taken care of as part of the adult education programs. Okay. Now, They have not been actually, kind of merged into the school education system. We have a Kerala State Literacy Management Authority, which has been taking care of ensuring that the gains that have been made by Kerala, the state of Kerala, way back in the 1990s. In 1991, as you would remember, the famed writer Mulkraj Anand came all the way from Delhi to declare in Kerala that it's 100% literate. From 100% literacy in 1991, 30 years have gone by. Some of the neo-literates have gone back, or rather, receded into the background, or have gone back to, the ignorance or the blindness again. We need to reactivate that. We need to shed the blindness altogether. That's where in functional literacy has to play a greater role. Today, we are having ever so many new ideas coming in. Financial literacy, for instance. How do we infuse financial literacy for the students? Be it the basic terms of economics or banking, or for the matter, financial instruments. So these are thoughts that come in. In terms of the Kerala State Literacy Mission activity, tremendous deal of mass-based programs have gone on to see to it that the neo-literates are ultimately provided with equivalence examination, which is of the par at the level of the 10th standard. So tomorrow, they all get the pass marks in the 10th standard, and all the grannies of having the age of 80 and 85 qualify the 10th standard examination. They proudly, show to the whole world that here I have got an SSC certificate with me. That's where we are.
I see, sir. That's truly inspiring, and the work which you are leading in the state, it's truly inspiring, and we hope that all other states also learn from the initiatives of Kerala, both in school education as well as literacy. Sir, any concluding thoughts with respect to if we have to make a national mission successful? What would be maybe the three focus areas with respect to improving quality education, and do you see that the states need to kind of have more forums where such sharing can be implemented, or do you feel that every state has its own success which is cannot be replicated? Your thoughts, please.
Three golden points. One, a child or a student has to be at the center of the scheme of affairs. He should not be relegated to the background. He should not be in the sidelines. Number two, teacher training has to include the infusion of the best possible technological practices so that the effectiveness of the discourse gets enhanced with every passing day. Three, don't tinker with the class curriculum, school curriculum, for any sectarian purpose. Let's see to it that the best ideals that have been enunciated in the Constitution of India are preserved forever so that able-bodied, well-thinking citizens are produced in this country. That's all.
Right. Thank you so much, Shri Mohammad Hanish sir, for joining us today. You've really it's been a refreshing talk for all of us here, and all the stakeholders who've been watching live, including government stakeholders, NGOs, and other stakeholders. They've really learned a lot as well, and we hope that other government officers who are watching this talk and who will be watching it are kind of inspired and refreshed to achieve the goals of foundational literacy and numeracy as a national mission. Thank you so much. We understand that you've been had a very busy day, but still you took out time for us. We truly appreciate that.
Any questions or anything that has to come in from Sunita Gandhi or any eminent personality over here? I can take
yes,
I can take a question for 5 more minutes. Questions.
okay,
For 5 minutes,
yes, sir.
if you would like
Sure,
to.
sir. Yes, sir. So here we would like to invite Dr. Sunita Gandhi also here, who's been listening intently. Dr. Gandhi, any thoughts or comments on sir's presentation?
Firstly, I found it quite in-depth discussion from the historical perspective till present, and I also found it very interesting that there are constraints, there are also opportunities, and that level best effort is being put forward. In this context, also, of course, we know that the government is asking us to put, for example, foundational literacy and numeracy at the center of all efforts, and that without this, everything else fails in a way. At least the NEP says that very clearly, that the rest of the education becomes irrelevant. Because if the children cannot read till grade 3 level, then they cannot progress in their education. So the ordinary steps that have been taken so far may not be adequate, not ordinary, say even extraordinary efforts, have not maybe yielded the result that you want or that we all think could be possible. What are your views on that? Can something be dramatically differently done? So we do talk about disruptive education. So what could be that disruptive that those goals actually take place in a timely manner or sooner than the time given to us?
Why don't we bring in our first standard, second standard, and the third standard students to the nature, straight to the lap of nature? And why don't we start off the classes under the banyan trees? And why don't we see to it that all those pearls of wisdom of the past, from the times of Indus Valley downwards, they are brought in and provided to the students. That's the kind of foundation or the kind of stratum on which the entire edifice of education can be built up. Tomorrow, remember, this country's focus has to be on to create itself as a global soft power, global power with soft strength. Soft strength comes in when education, culture, literacy, and social awareness multiplies. It's not just measurable on the basis of GDPs and GNPs alone. In terms of GDPs and GNPs, there will be ever so many countries ahead of us. So this is the beginning. Secondly, why don't we have all those concepts of chemistry, physics, and biology, little bundles of small, absolutely simplistic theorems based on which the huge, edifice of science and technology is created? Why can't we inculcate that in the primary session, say up before fifth standard is over? Newton's law of Einstein's, law of theory of relativity or whatever, they're all the beginnings to great success stories. The entire edifice of this AI and ML and whatever, it's all been created based on some 10 or 12 theorems altogether, isn't it? Go back to the roots, go back to the origins, come to the lap of nature, try to understand the worth of this planet.
So these are fantastic ideas, and I wish they would be implemented. But then, as you have pointed out in your own presentation, that there are constraints. So, how do you make this beautiful, rich vision come true as a policymaker leading change? How, from top-down policy point of view, what 1, 2, 3 can be done to make this kind of education real for all children?
Number one, all reforms should start at home. So naturally enough, these reforms have to start in the state of Kerala. And I'm of course authorized to do it. I will try with that, number one. Number two, in all the consultative forums across the world and across the country, especially with Government of India, MHRD, let me try to put forth my point of view. My colleagues, my friends sit in Delhi as well. In fact, some of my very best friends and my batchmates actually happen to crowd around the place of Ministry of Human Resource Development. So far, so good. So I should be able to convince my good friends very well. And then number three, let the political establishment also take a call in it.
Yes, truly, because there are governance issues. One of the things we have been really keen on, how to make children as proactive agents of social transformation, that they should become service oriented. Today, I visited the University of Lucknow, and I feel that even in the courses that are designed to teach social services, social work, that the consciousness of the other is not created, because it is assumed is too late by the time they come to university. So schools have to really create a social mindset in the children. Um, of course, teachers as exemplars. We can't always, as you said, the teachers will be a variety of natures and variety of efforts they'll put in. But how through curriculum and governance, especially, because you can use a government order to say that all children in high school will find somebody who is illiterate and make them literate, for example. Now in Kerala, Ernakulam is from is a fantastic example. 30 years ago, how the youth in the Ernakulam literacy movement got involved, and they created 20,000 of them got involved, and as volunteers, and created history. So something quite dramatic, something dramatic has to be thought of to make sure that things don't go just the old way a little better, because little better is not enough. We need to fill a big huge gap now with the COVID. So what are your thoughts on that?
I think every politically inclined person, socially inclined person, may impart at least a quarter of his time for taking various steps and taking, some deal of activity based on education, enhancement of the quality of education, because it adds to the value of the person, value of the society, and value of the neighborhood. That's where we need to focus upon. That leads to so many other better things. Let's be very clear about it. The emancipation of a socially backward, financially backward youngster can only happen through education and education alone. From Steve Jobs to Sundar Pichai to X or Y or Z, this is the same story of the world. So let's strive to devote at least 25% of your social space for enhancement of the quality of education.
Yes, sir. So I can echo that. And we, think that a lot of governments, a lot of people have been working towards quality education, improvement in quality. But where is the evidence that quality is improving? Where is the research work? Where is the data that shows the quality? We did X, and because of
That's
X, the quality of education went up. Y.
that's why NUPA, NCRT, all those SCRTs across the state, across the country, and the various educational research organizations like Disha or Drishti, Disha, ACER,
Nishtha.
Nishta, Disha, isn't it? Yeah, they should all
It's
actually
also,
be doing
yes.
doing a great deal of work.
Nishtha.
So many
Nishtha and
interesting things.
Nishtha.
So many interesting things come about for a state that is educationally backward, like reportedly backward, like Bihar. The levels of acquisition of knowledge of the student in the fifth standard, in comparison to the so-called so these are fascinating stories that are coming across from various parts of the country. Uttarakhand does very well. Himachal does very well. Is there something like a linkage between the mountains and education? I don't know.
They're rising high with the mountains inspiring them. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's it.
Okay. This is all very, very helpful. Thank you so much. And I really appreciated your time here and your views
And
are
I
helpful.
hope all of you got a little deal of enrichment by whatever rambling thought which I had given. I hope so.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Magnanimous. Thank you so much. Fantastic
Thanks very much.
presentation. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you, sir, for joining us on this session, for sharing your thoughts. And to all those who are joining us, we hope that you'll take some of these ideas back, which sir had shared, with respect to improving the quality of education. Also, thank you to Dr. Sunita Gandhi for joining us here with your thoughts and your questions.